Hi Year 12s. Today we're looking at the second video in the endocrine system PowerPoint. Again, this is part of the homeostasis topic, second half of the endocrine system. Today we're going to be looking at hormones and regulation. Last time we looked at the overall endocrine system as a whole. Today we're looking at just hormones and regulation. Also remember, we've also looked at diabetes as well in the last video and how insulin and glucagon help control blood glucose levels. So, first off, what we're going to talk about today is thyroxine. So, thyroxine is a hormone that works along with something called thyroid stimulating hormone. So, TSH is thyroid stimulating hormone and thyroxine is often referred to as T4. Both of these hormones help to regulate the rate of metabolism in our body via negative feedback. How does that work? Well, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, is synthesized in the pituitary gland inside of our brains. Thyroxine is synthesized in the thyroid gland. Thyroid stimulating hormone, as the name suggests, stimulates the thyroid gland to produce thyroxine. And when thyroxine is released, it changes into a hormone called triiodithyronine, T3. That stimulates every tissue in the body to metabolize. Consequently, it's going to increase your heart rate, your breathing rate, and your rate of cellular respiration. The secretion of the thyroid stimulating hormone from the pituitary gland is always regulated by changes in the blood concentration of thyroxine. So when thyroxine is low in the blood, thyroid stimulating hormone is released to stimulate the release of thyroxine. What about the process called hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism? Again, remembering the word hypo and hypo meaning low, hyper meaning high. So hypothyroidism is insufficient production of thyroid hormones by the thyroid gland. So there's low amounts of thyroxine and TSH. The symptoms of this are poor ability to tolerate cold, poor memory and concentration, and constantly feeling tired. Whereas hyperthyroidism is too much. We have excessive production of thyroid hormones by the thyroid gland. This leads to poor ability to tolerate heat because your body is just constantly going through cellular respiration, producing more heat, so you're constantly feeling hot. You've got a rapid heartbeat, you're very irritable, and you have difficulty sleeping. Moving on to osmoregulation and antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuretic hormone is a hormone that regulates osmoregulation. We call it ADH. Changes in the osmolarity of blood can trigger the production or secretion of ADH into the blood. So, when you have high osmolarity, it means you've got a low water concentration in your body, which could be caused by water loss, dehydration, high levels of sugar or salt in the blood, or possibly diarrhea, making you lose a lot of water. Whereas osmolarity being low in the body means you've got high amounts of water. So that could be you've had lots of water or fluid ingested into your body, you may have low levels of sugar or salt in your blood, or you may have a symptom called Syndrome of Inappropriate ADH Secretion, SIADH. So what exactly is ADH? We're talking about ADH a lot. Well, ADH, like I said before, is a hormone, and it targets cells that are in the distal convoluted tubule and collecting ducts of the kidney. Now, when ADH binds to the receptors of those cells, it increases the permeability of the cells to water, allowing high levels of water to diffuse from the filtrate of the blood. So, ADH, produced in the circulatory system when osmolarity of the blood increases above the tolerance limit. Your osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus detect those high osmolarity levels, and stimulate the release of ADH into the blood. ADH is transported to the kidneys, where it forms a receptor hormone complex and increases the permeability of the distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct to water. Water diffuses into the blood from the filtrate, decreasing osmolarity of the blood and decreasing the amount of water that's going to be excreted via urine. Instead, it's keeping all that water into the body. This decrease in osmolarity of the blood inhibits further production and secretion of ADH, and the cycle continues as per normal. Our other example is example 2, where production and secretion of ADH decreases because osmolarity of the blood has decreased below the tolerance limit. So osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus detect low osmolarity levels and inhibit the release of ADH into the blood. That means less ADH is being transported to the kidneys, which means the permeability of the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct become decreased, less water leaves those. That means less water is going to be reabsorbed into the blood from the filtrate, and therefore osmolarity increases, and the volume of water excreted in urine increases. We know that blood transport materials between cells back and forth, something you've learnt in Year 9 in the circulatory system. We know that water is a major component of blood because it helps with thermoregulation because it's got high heat capacity. We know that the quantity of water in blood affects osmolarity, but now we need, like I said before, we need to know that it affects blood volume and blood pressure. Osmolarity is monitored by our body through osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus, whereas blood pressure is monitored by baroreceptors in the blood vessels. When osmolarity decreases, it's because water is diffused into the blood, and it increases when water diffuses out of the blood. Blood volume and blood pressure are both opposite to this, so blood volume and blood pressure will both increase when water diffuses into the blood, but they'll both decrease when water diffuses out of the blood. Makes sense, really? When water diffuses into the blood, you have more blood there. If there's more blood there, there's more pressure because there's more of it, forcing it through the arteries and the veins and capillaries. When water diffuses out, you have less blood, so there's less volume of it. When there's less of it, there's less pressure of it against the walls, it can flow freely. Hypertension and hypertension. Hypertension occurs when blood pressure drops below the tolerance limit. Hypertension occurs when blood pressure rises above the tolerance limit. Again, there's those words hypo and hyper. Hypo low, hyper high. Hypotension, like I said before, blood pressure is low. It's caused by dehydration, stress, donating blood or blood tests, trauma and pregnancy, or medications. The symptoms of hypotension are lightheadedness, dizziness, blurred vision, fatigue, and possibly fainting. Hypertension, on the other hand, when your blood pressure is risen above the tolerance limit, that's because of genetic factors, obesity, a diet high in fat, salt, or cholesterol, heavy consumption of alcohol, cigarette smoke, or lack of exercise. Symptoms of hypertension generally aren't there very often. There's very few symptoms that actually show, but we do know that hypertension can greatly lead to heart attacks and strokes. So heart attacks and strokes could be a sign of hypertension, which is often not the first symptom you want to obviously see.
That's all, folks.